Pucks with Haggs
is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Welcome to the Pucks with Haggs podcast, powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I'm your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Subscribe to a premium membership and get all of my writing sent straight directly to your inbox, NHL, Bruins-wise. I also write 3 columns a week for the Boston Sports Journal, bostonsportsjournal.com. Covers every sport. Very talented cast of writers there. So definitely check that out. This week and today we've got Mick Colageo as a guest, longtime friend and colleague. Mick, thank you for coming, and please let everybody know where they can find your work.
My work has been on Boston hockey now for a year or so, and we're working out through a little glitch here to see if that's going to continue. But Rink Wrap is back, reviving that after a summer of slumber. And I link to that on X and Twitter. And you can find me in the latest keynote issue of the Hockey News, which called the Yearbook. Find the Bruins article there, and it's a formalized formula thing. Every team's article looks the same except for the details, but I'm the one who provided it for the Bruins. So it's pretty much that, and then guys like Joe Haggerty pull me in here so I can go blah 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 about the Bruins, and I'm grateful for that. So
that's right. Who doesn't love a little blah 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 about the Bruins, Mick? We all love that. All right, let's just get into it, Mick. I haven't had you on for a little bit. I don't think we talked about Tyler Johnson, right? I haven't talked to you about that.
I don't believe we have.
They picked him up on a camp invite last week, or maybe it was earlier this week. We've been speculating and kicking around like Kyler Yamamoto.
Yeah, that name came up a lot early in the summer.
Max Pacioretty. Like, there's a lot of names of guys that are still out there. I remember when I did a list at the beginning of the summer, Tyler Johnson was definitely on that list of players that they might bring in and candidates because, he's one of the best players that was out there. Certainly very experienced, over 700 games, 2 Stanley Cups with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Versatile. He can play center or wing. He had some great offensive seasons with the Lightning when he was on that triplets line with Kucherov and Andre Palat. And, obviously he's a little older now in his mid-30s. Was kind of in a third-line situation with Chicago where, like, his minus numbers were terrible. But pretty much everybody's minus numbers were terrible.
There were 9 players in the NHL who got outscored at even strength more than Tyler Johnson. And 3 of them were Blackhawks teammates. And I think 5 of the 2 or 4 of the others played for San Jose.
Yeah.
And I think the only other guy who broke that list was Cam Fowler.
Well, one of them was Connor Bedard, I think, because he was like a minus 48 or 50 or something like that when the season was up. Like, his plus minus was horrible. But like that was like the whole roster.
But the thing I think the Bruins are looking at is obviously the fact that 17 goals in 60 whatever games it was, that translates to over 20 on an 82-game pace. So the guy's still got skills. The question is, can he keep up, and does he still play hard? And if you play hard, and you were part of a winning team, then you certainly, now granted, when the Lightning won the Cup in 21, Johnson was a fourth line, 10-minute-a-game guy. So he was already being phased out and had been eclipsed on that club. He's a back niner to be sure. And he's, but I think that when you look at power play, the same reasonability that they decided to bring in Kevin Shattenkirk. And I think it's similar when you talk about this guy.
I think he led the Blackhawks in power play goals. He and Nick Foligno led the team in power play goals. So he's still got it, like, as far as finishing on the power play.
Okay, well, there you go then. I mean, so he's got a good stick. And I don't think the stick is the last thing to go when I think in the early 80s when guys' knees used to go sooner and their shoulders used to go sooner, that they went off a cliff of goal production. You reach like age 30, 31 in that day and age of which was pretty rough and tumble, and medicine and fitness training wasn't all that it is right now. I think, though, that a guy like Johnson, the Bruins are saying, let's put him in a good, positive, two-way hockey environment so that he's never hurting us when we're playing him, but he may be useful to us if we decide we need something there that's going to, help us generate a little more goal production, especially on a power play.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. And it seems like he shoots the puck on the power play, which the Bruins can always use guys that are willing to shoot on the power play. But there's a couple other things going on here, I think. One of them is I think he's very good third line center insurance if Matt Patra is not ready and ends up starting in Providence. He's a guy that could potentially be a candidate to be a third line center on this team. Especially if Trent Frederick, Morgan Geekie end up on a second line.
Because even though you got guys who can play that role, none of them are glue guys. Right. None of them have that. None of those guys are really handsy.
Right. So, he's in that way, he could be a line driver more than those other guys if he was potentially in a third line center situation. But I think it really just gives you somebody, a veteran guy. If you get to camp and Matt Patra pretty clearly needs some development time in Providence, I think you need to have at least one more person that can step in and play that role if he's not ready to go. And I think the other part is that he clearly has the offensive skill. He's demonstrated in the past. He's put up big number. He had 29 goals and 70-something points one of those years in Tampa. And some of his years in Tampa were very good offensively, production-wise. And he's been decent otherwise. But he's shown the ability he can play with higher-end players, like he did with Palat and Kucherov. So he could also be potentially a right-shot guy that could slide in with Brad Marchand and Charlie Coyle if you're looking for somebody that's a little more skill-oriented than, the Morgan Geekie, Trent Frederick, those kind of guys. If they're not quite what you want there in the top six, if Fabian Lysell and Merkelov aren't ready for prime time, I think he's a guy that you could potentially look in that spot.
One more thing to look at that's definitely a different hockey widget than anything else that's in camp. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, that's exactly what you're looking for in one of these veteran tryouts.
It's probably the closest comparable is Patra, and he's at the beginning of his career, and Johnson Sorde is in the sunset. So the question is, do we need something that like Patra? If Patra's not ready to go, you have a surgery that ends your season prematurely. He may need some time here to grind it out and figure it out and get back and be a better version of himself. It'd be awesome for them.
Mick, some people are going to view that maybe as a failure or a step back for him, and I don't think that's at all. He couldn't play in the AHL last year.
We've seen enough decades of Bruins hockey to know that these things happen.
Yes.
And the guys, look at Randy Burridge. He's a great player for the Bruins, a real, low center of gravity, good skills left winger who could really come in and grind in the corners, go to the net. He was a good player.
Burridge.
Yeah, Stump. And so what was it? Dump, bump, and stump.
That's right.
And so I think that you look at a guy like him and you say, okay, he comes in, everybody says, well, this guy's going to be great. Well, the next camp, not so much. The development curve looks uneven. It looks like a failure. Oh, is this person a bust? No, it's not a bust. It's just this is going to take some time, So it might take time. He might be good. This airplane might just take right off and go resume its flight. That's the outcome the Bruins want, but they're ready to accept these realities. That's right.
They don't know. The bottom line is they don't know what's going to there's a few different things. They really don't know how it's going to play out in camp. So you're going to hedge your bets by bringing in some insurance policies just in case. And from Johnson's perspective, it's probably one of the few places you could go as a veteran on a tryout deal where there's going to be a legit competition for a top 6 spot on a playoff team. That I would think the Bruins is going to be, they might even bring in another veteran tryout for camp, because I think it's going to be tremendously attractive for a lot of the Bruins players that they're going to get a real chance to win a really nice spot potentially on a team that's going to be opening up for grabs. And that's one thing that all those veteran guys are looking for when they're choosing these camp tryouts, where they're basically singing for their supper when they get there.
Yeah, it's got me thinking now. It's all starting to crystallize in my head that probably the 3 most compelling training camps coming up for the Bruins are going to be Jonas Korpisalo, Fabian Lysell, and Tyler Johnson. I mean, because I'm looking at these guys saying, look, everybody else, whether they start fast, whether they start slow, Marchand's coming off of surgeries, that it doesn't really change anything about the trajectory of those players. It's pretty much going to go forward as planned, and we're going to keep on working it, and the regular season will become an extension of camp. But in the case of the guys who they really need to figure out, where are they at, and can they help us right now, or do we need to do something different with those spots? those are going to be the guys that I'm looking at the most.
Yeah, and I think the Korpisalo thing extends to Bussy. I think that's going to be a legit competition where if Korpisalo struggles in any way, even if he's just average, and if Bussy comes in and looks really, really good and has a great camp, I think there's going to be like a lot of thought among the Bruins brass.
They're going to find themselves with a decision.
Yeah. Do we keep Bussy and send Korpisalo down to Providence to start the year because we're worried about losing Bussy on waivers? I think that's going to be a huge consideration.
I'm a little cynical when it comes to the goalie stuff like this because I look at I go back like 10 years when Svedberg was a good prospect for the Bruins and Providence. And I remember Peter, giving us a declaration that, the camp's going to decide it. Whoever the best players are in camp, that's who's going to make the team. Svedberg was easily the best goalie in that camp, and he got sent down because they already knew what they were going to do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, now this isn't the same management team. But I do feel like that's still. I feel that little man keep whispering that in my ear while I'm watching this thing unfold. But I am equally intrigued. I love how the Bruins identified Bussy as a late bloomer. He's a Ken Dryden-esque tall guy who happens to be a left stick like Tony Esposito. I'm just no pressure, Brandon. So he's coming in to a situation where he's done nothing but ingratiate himself to the management and to the P. Bruins coaching staff because he's a team guy. First P. Bruins game I saw the year that Bussy was with them, he was in the stands and Kaiser was in net. And Bussy was like the goalie coach or it was like he was his big brother or something, the way he was rooting for him. And every little thing that happened, whether it was a reverse V play or near the post or a certain way he covered a certain thing, he's right there. He's kind of like it. And I talked to Mooj after the game, and he said that's him. That's totally him. He's great teammate, great guy, and so easy to root for, and a guy you hope is going to find a way to stick around this team. And who knows? Maybe we'll find out that his level can be NHL as well. Because that's the uncharted territory here.
Yeah, but I think as long as Swayman signs, I think there's going to be a legit thought put into – because they're not going to lose Korpisalo on waivers. Nobody is going to take on that contract if they sent him down to Providence. If they feel like there's any danger whatsoever based on Bussy's performance, based on a team needing a goalie around the league they could get on the cheap with Bussy – if they feel there's any way whatsoever that they're going to lose Bussy on waivers, which I think is maybe a little bit more legit, the concern about losing him as a goalie than it was on some of the other players in the past that they've been afraid they were going to lose on waivers. I could see a situation where they start with Bussy, let him have a little run at the beginning of the year, especially if Swayman's going to play a lot, put Korpisalo down in Providence, and then maybe Bussy's just okay. And you mean
if they decide that Korpisalo just taking the Korpisalo piece of this, that they decide that he needs to play himself into being the goalie, the best version of himself?
Well, that's part of the equation too, for sure. That he's down playing regularly in Providence.
I can't imagine him not being on this team unless they've decided independently of all the other context stuff that's how they feel about him. That's what help him.
I think that there's potential where they could stash him down there.
Then he plays a lot.
Yeah. If they think they're going to lose Bussy, I don't think they want to lose Bussy for anything. Basically, it comes down to asset management.
That going to drive the Bussy of this decision?
It could very well drive the Bussy. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than in 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. Right now, you can take advantage of Caitlin Clark, racking up triple doubles and dropping dimes in every game she's playing, or hop on the Jaron Duran train as he's posting big offensive numbers in just about every statistical category imaginable. One Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss the deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. So since we're talking about goalies, any thoughts on anything that's gone on with Jeremy Swayman since the last time we talked? I don't think, like, he spoke on the podcast. Marchand spoke this week on Tuesday, and we talked about it a couple days ago with Evan Marinofski, and I thought the comments were interesting when he talked about his contract and his future, where he was very specific about, like, Don Sweeney and my agents have a lot of trust between them. You're never going to hear anything publicly about my contract or my situation. I'm not going to talk about it after this. Basically, like, we don't talk about that. That's not something we do. And, you know, I'm paraphrasing.
Swayman's going to be a GM someday.
I'm paraphrasing here, but, like, I found that interesting in terms of, like, how things are playing out with Jeremy Swayman and how public some of the stuff has been and his comments have been, where Marchand's basically, like, kind of setting the tone and setting the example of, you shouldn't be talking about that. Like, you know, let the GM and let the agent hash it out. And, you know, you sort of, like, don't say anything.
He's putting his captain hat on. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
I mean, did you read that? I'm sure you saw the comments. Did you get that sense as well?
Yeah, I wasn't there for the Marchand avail, but I was there on Thursday. But yeah,
I was there Tuesday, and I definitely got that sense that
it sounds that way to
about
me.
Himself and, like, leading by example, sort of talking about, this is how we do things in the Bruins dressing room, and this is how the organization does things.
Right. I think that's a very captain-like move by him. I like how Marchand, you know, for all that's going on with him, you have 3 surgeries to tell the media about, and how you're not sure exactly how this is going to play out as far as your readiness to be the best version of yourself as a hockey player, and how much of the season might take. I read Steve Conroy on this, but he has a great ability to be cognizant of comments about anything else above and beyond things that affect him personally, and just talking from a team angle. I think he's been a terrific captain that way, and it continues with him right here off the hop. Here he is, you know, and he's being asked to talk about this situation, and you know, well prepared, so I'm impressed with that, and I also like the fact that he's not hung up at all about the contract thing for himself. He's going into his last year of his grossly underpaid deal. And I do think that even though Marchand's been a guy who had double labrum a few years ago, and he's had some injuries since then that have certainly become more of a factor than it would have been in him 10 years ago when he was in his 20s and not his mid-30s. You know, he's getting in toward the twilight of his own career, and you'd say he wants to go until this train's wheels come right off and leaves the track. He wants to keep on playing. That's his mindset. He's a battler at the core of it. And I really think that, you know, I don't know how this, I didn't think about his negotiations and think, how is that going to play out? And thinking, like, boy, for a guy who's been taking a hometown discount and allowed them to have a great hockey team for the last several years because of this hometown discount, I do think that it'd be nice if the Bruins recognize that when they do his next contract.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting with him because I think he should get some kind of multi-year deal with a decent amount. Like, I don't think he's going to break the bank, obviously, nor do I think he wants to. Like, I think he was also, when he talked to us, and he talked to us for like 20 minutes, when he talked to us, you could tell he was from a standpoint of, like, I've got more money than I'll ever need. Like, you know, I'm comfortable. Like, you know, that's not the priority for him, really. I think it's about winning, and it's about playing as long as he can. I think those are, like, the things that are really important to him. And that's another message too, right? Like, that's something that's wisdom from an older player that, at a certain point when you're getting paid certain amount of dollars a year, you've got more money than you're ever going to be able to spend in your lifetime. So like, other things should also be factored in addition to like getting every last nickel and dime.
Right.
But yeah, I thought all of that was interesting, and his contract is going to be interesting. There's no doubt about it. Like, because he's over 35, he starts to qualify for those 1-year incentive laden deals like Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci had, and a lot of players around the league take.
Right.
And you wonder if he's going to turn into like Bergeron did at that age, where he started taking 1-year deals every year.
Evaluating his situation. Well, I mean, unlike Bergeron, I don't think he's contemplating retirement.
No.
So I think in his case, it's like, I'm just going until the body tells me you can't do it anymore.
Yep. Well, or he always says, until they rip the jersey off my back. He said that one.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is totally understandable, and I think it's great. Like, he's going to learn from being the captain for the first time last year, and I think he's going to be even better at it this year. And we'll see how he bounces back from all the injury stuff. But like, he's going to have an entire training camp.
He's already showing us, except for the hockey part,
But like, he's got a month and a half, 2 months to get ready. So like. The one thing is, how much did not being able to work out this summer because of those surgeries is going to impact him during the year or have some kind of an effect. It'll be there.
And you know what? It won't be unlike the last few seasons. I mean, between the injuries that necessitated the double labrum, to the comeback year from that, to the recent injuries, it seems to me like you can go back to COVID, back to 19, and since then, it seems like every year there's Marchand, who for whatever length the stretch of the season looks like 27-year-old Marchand.
Yep.
And then there's parts of the season you say something's off with Marchand, and I'm not sure what it is.
36 years old.
And well, but how does that happen? It comes through the form of these injuries. You have a greater propensity for them.
Right.
And you're in his world, you're going out there to play hockey. You're not thinking about, you want to just be a good player. You're not thinking about, well, I don't expect this much because I'm this much hurt or whatever. But there's certain points where you can see there used to be a time where he could take one stride, change the area code that he was in. And then there's times where it looks like he's just basically skating in sand. And relative to his own lofty standards is what I mean. He's still a great player, but you can tell that he's not as formidable to the opponents and as much of a going concern, like Fred Cusick used to say, as he had been, because it's such a struggle for him just to play through the injuries. So, and I feel like those have become more and more significant patches of each season that he plays. So hopefully this season will start out with him getting over his stuff, and then he'll hit the sweet spot later.
Yeah, but like, I think it's also reality that when you hit a certain point in your career, if you're a guy like Brad Marchand, that's one of the smallest guys around and still very physical, and he's played that way his entire career, I think you're going to pay, the bill is going to come due for playing that way.
Oh, no question. Size.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing that now to a degree, but that's okay. Like, that's part of the deal, but that has to get factored into the contract too.
He's
but
a
I
war
think
horse.
Part of the deal with him, where he's going to start missing a little bit more time probably every season. I don't think he's going to be able to play 82 games every single year.
I always feel like sports management doesn't want to ever really take the lead on that and tell a player, look, we need you to be there in the playoffs at 100%. So we're going to back you off now. They never go for that. It never really happens.
No, and when you're the captain, I think you feel the responsibility to be out there, and that's probably, I'm sure that weighs on him quite a bit. But like, we found out after the fact, he played through with a torn ligament in his elbow all season long, and they had to have surgery. Stuff like that, he's going to play through too, and that's just part of the deal with him. Also, is he's going to play when other guys might not.
Like, remember that overtime goal he scored at Uniondale to what was it, the Barclays Center? I don't remember anymore. But he scored an overtime goal against the Islanders in the 21 playoffs.
Yes,
and it was a way on the left boards,
bad angle shot,
half wall. Yeah. And he's getting, and a guy's trying to push him down where he shoots it off balance and he freaking roofs the damn thing on a bad angle. Unbelievable shot.
Yep.
There's elite little fine things that he is capable of as a hockey player that he needs to be 100% fit to make happen. And so that level of Marchand, I don't know if we'll ever see it again. But I do think that the version he's able to deliver is still a very worthwhile one for the Bruins.
Yeah, I think we still see it occasionally. Was it against the Leafs in the playoffs where he scored like 3 goals in a row?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
we still see those.
There's surges.
He still has the ability to do that. I just don't think he can consistently do it as much and for as long as stretches as maybe he did in the past. But you still see the ability there.
Yeah.
And he has to pick his spots and turn it on. And he still has that. Like if he's feeling good.
Yeah, if he's feeling good,
night, you're going to see that happen.
Yeah.
So like just the fact that danger and that potential is there, like separates him from other guys on the team.
That's true.
And the courage, bravery part of it too, like just the way he plays as well, the emotional component that he brings to the table consistently. So the Spit and Chicklets podcast, I think had talked about Swayman a little bit, and they had mentioned, I think it was Ryan Whitney had mentioned that he had heard the Bruins, the last offer they had that he knew of was 4 years and $6.2 million for Swayman, I guess.
Yeah.
And then on the other, see, this is the thing that obviously is low. That's obviously a starting point offer that is nowhere near what you think you're going to end up signing him for. Because as you add the years and as you add the free agent years that you're buying off, the average annual value number is going to go up because they're buying out all of his free agent UFA years. So I would expect that it was just a starting point that's definitely going to go up from there. But like on the other end, I've now heard this multiple times where Jeremy Swayman is said to be looking for the Charlie McAvoy contract, which was $9.5 million, I believe.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get that. Okay. Like, why would a goalie be looking for a defenseman contract? That does not compute. Like, that's bullshit. That you can't be a goalie saying, I want the Ray Bork contract. Like, that is not how it works. Like, you don't get paid like somebody else is playing a different position on the team. Because honestly, if you want to compare the two, like, you haven't done what Charlie McAvoy did before he signed that deal.
I disagree with that.
No, Charlie McAvoy was not splitting time with somebody else. Charlie McAvoy was a top pairing defenseman since the time he came into the league.
Yeah,
like,
but he was taking care of him on the early end of that.
No, he was
and
already
at the end of it, he had emerged.
He was already doing the job at an extremely high level.
Well, that's because that's who they had.
With anybody else.
Yeah.
Like, just on its face.
I know, but I'm looking at a guy what career stage are you in? I think this is what I think Swayman's saying.
But that's not how it works.
You gave this to a developing player before you had the leverage to take it. And
it's apples and oranges comparing yourself to a defenseman, though.
I'm okay with that, but I'm okay with your argument there. I'm not fighting your argument, but I am thinking. I'm just saying that I think the prism through which the case is being made, if in fact this is reliable info, is that developing player who's passing all his tests got this. I'm a comparable stage player at similar age, similar development point, passing all my tests. You've identified me as this rock solid piece of your foundation. All the planets are aligning here. Why am I not getting what he gets? I think that would be the theory that, as I would interpret it, if that in fact is what Swayman's team has presented to the Bruins.
Yeah, well, this is what I think. I think they're saying they want the McAvoy contract because if they say they want the Vasilevsky contract, which is what he's getting paid, it's going to sound like they're smoking crack. Because you're not anywhere close to what Andrei Vasilevsky is, and you want his contract when you're Jeremy Swayman and you haven't played more than 44 games in a year. Like, you don't get that kind of contract until you've won a Vezina trophy, until you've actually literally gone out and proven that you're one of the best goalies in the year. This is part of the reason why I think they're saying they want the McAvoy contract instead of saying, like, I want to get paid like the best goalies in the entire NHL.
Well, you're hinting at something that I think has changed quite a bit in the NHL over the last few years, and that is that Group 2 guys, restricted free agents, even those without arbitration rights, have been the practice of teams is changing to identify those players before that negotiating leverage is there and pay them at market level prices.
Hasn't been that way with goalies, though. It hasn't happened with goalies.
Well, maybe not, but why not? Is what he's saying. And so my point is that,
and the Bruins are saying,
why should the goalies arbitrarily be excluded from that
because we know that why. Because the goalies don't have as much trade value around the league. Because the goalies
are you kidding me? Swayman is like the bee's knees of trade value right now.
No, they still would not get. If Swayman was a forward or a D, they would get far more, like based on what he's done to this point, they would get far more if he was one of those positions.
I believe he is exceptional. I believe he is an exception to that algorithm.
Mick, the only reason they got a first-round pick when they traded Ullmark is because they swallowed the Korpisalo contract. Like, goalies do not have – they wouldn't have gotten a first-rounder for a guy that's won a Vezina in the last couple of years unless they took on like a terrible contract in exchange, which is basically kind of the going rate for getting a first round pick anyways, absorbing that kind of deal. So like goalies do not have the trade value that the other positions do. They just don't. And they're not viewed the same way. Like, even though I think goalies are tremendously important in hockey, and having a really good goalie can make all the difference. And honestly, Jeremy Swayman was their best player in the playoffs last year. Like, and all that stuff is true. But at the same time, the value around the league and the way they're viewed around the league, just as positionally, is not the same as defenseman and forward. And I don't think that's changing.
Well, I think historically you're right when you talk about them as a group. I think historically you're right, because I've long stated and many times stated, and lest I be misunderstood in this discussion, that hockey has a ton of great coaches and a ton of great goalies. It's like a drummer of a rock band. The important thing is finding the right one for your team. Yeah. And there's a special interaction and a chemistry that occurs. Some of it's mechanical, some of it's how you play, some of it's personal. And finding the right one for your team is what's going to take you to another level. And that's a magical thing that's hard to accomplish, and there's no code for it. So you have to just use all your experience to try to figure that out.
And the Bruins obviously feel and I do too, that they've got the right one and the right fit with Swayman, and I think he's the right guy for that team. And like a flip side of the coin, I think Jeremy Swayman loves being a Boston Bruin. I think he loves Boston. I think he's fallen in love with this area, with this team, with the fans, like all that stuff. Like he doesn't want to go anywhere. So this is going to end up getting done at the end of the day between the two sides because they like him. He loves it here. Like I think it's going to work out regardless of what's going on right now. But I just think it rings incredibly false to me when you hear a goalie saying, I want this defenseman contract that he got. Like that it just rings so false. That is not how you negotiate. That is not how you determine your value. You can't say you're comparable to a defenseman. Like everything about it is wrong and completely antithetical to how contract negotiations work, how you determine your value.
Have worked. But I think that we're in a changing, volatile changing time when managements go out and give Group 2 players without arbitration rights career market level contracts. What's Seider about? Did Seider sign yet?
I don't think he did. Okay. But Seider's a defenseman. Like this point continues. This is not happening. This is a phenomenon that is not happening for goalies.
Well,
nobody is going out and preemptively.
Maybe it just didn't yet.
Well, I don't think it's going to happen with this one. The Bruins, I think Swayman and Louis Gross are going to find out the hard way, even though they have a lot of leverage because Ullmark is gone. I don't think the Bruins are going to bend here and give him $9 million a year.
Yeah, and we've been careful about that too, is to make sure anybody who says that nobody wants to put on Swayman that he's using the Ullmark decision as now I got leverage that I didn't have before. Because I think he has great amount of confidence in his value and his belief about where he stands, and that is what drives this.
Looking for concert tickets for the rest of this summer or early fall? Last year, I used Game Time to get tickets to Def Leppard, Poison, Motley Crue, and Joan Jett at Fenway Park. And you can go out and get Fenway Park concert tickets this summer and this fall with Game Time. Pearl Jam's coming in September. I believe Post Malone is also coming to Fenway Park in September. So why not use Game Time to get your tickets for those concerts, in addition to the football action that you're going to have that's just starting up as well, that you can use Game Time to get Patriots tickets or any tickets to either NFL or college football all around. So it's fantastic using Game Time right now, taking the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. You can have all-in pricing, which is the feature shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views, you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee, which is my favorite, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply again, but create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Yeah, no, I agree. But I think it's he thinks he's right. Like, this is a side where both sides think they're in the right, which makes for a tough negotiation, where both sides think they have the point, they have good points, they have the ultimate like way it should go, and they believe in like their stance. Like that's what makes it hard in a difficult negotiation. But like the bottom line is, and like, but the troubling is that Louis Gross he's had some tough negotiations with the Bruins. Torrey Krug and the Bruins, he is Torrey Krug's agent, and they had some tough negotiations along the way with Torrey Krug. Mm-hmm. And I think he does have a little bit of a history of having guys that hold out at times and don't, report to camp or don't whatever to get the contract that they want. So like, I think all of that is part of this equation. But like, and I go back to what Swayman said before, like, I just want to hear what he thinks his comparables are, because if I don't know what comparables he could think he has, they're going to pay him $9.5 million a year. And you can't say that McAvoy is a comparable, because you would get laughed out of negotiations if you said something like that. Like, I think Sorokin is the absolute, like, I don't even think he's at that level. Like, he's below that. Like, he's somewhere, I think, in the high sevens. Like, if he signed the deal that Saros signs and he gets paid like $7.75 million a year for like 7 years or whatever, if they do some kind of contract like that, I think that's extremely good for him. Like, I think that is honestly at or above what his comparables would say he should get. Like, I think the Bruins
maybe the argument's about term.
The Bruins, I think the offer that they made is actually in line with comparables.
Well, that's what clearly the way they've gone at this.
Yeah.
And you see reason in that. I look at this and I say, from Swayman's camp, it's like, well, then guess what? We're not doing 7 years.
Right. Which is fine.
I don't think it's fine.
Well, no, but
if I'm the Bruins, I'd rather figure out what the negotiations would be down the road here.
And it may end up like costing them down the line, right? Because if they sign, let's say they sign him like a 3-year, $21 million deal or something like that. Yeah. They're going to end up, like, I'm sure he's going to play great. Like, I am a true Jeremy Swayman believer when it comes to
yes, you have been. Before it became about the money question, you were totally, Swayman's going to be the guy.
Well, and at the beginning of the year, I said Swayman should start game one of the playoffs, and he should be the playoff guy, and he should get the ball this time, and he did. And I truly believe in him as a goaltender, and always have.
Yeah.
And I like him as a person, and I think he's, like, excellent. I think he's the golie of the future for them for a long, long time.
Right.
But I also
Harry Sinden is so proud of you right now.
but I also have, like, I believe you've got to.
But you're not going to get it here.
You got to be reasonable in negotiations. Like, you've got to do it the right way. Like, I don't even understand where they're coming from. Like, as far as why they're asking for McAvoy, the McAvoy deal. Like, that I don't get. Like, you can't ask for a defenseman contract when you're a goalie. Like, that makes no sense. So, like, that's going to bother me. I think
the compartmentalization of goaltenders, because there are many, is also makes a presumption that we can easily replace you. And I think that's what the poker game here is. Can you?
Yeah. It'll be interesting. Anything else on your mind, Bruins wise, before we go, Mick?
I think that last year the cup was always going to be half full without Bergeron and Krejci. And I think that the atmosphere is going to be a little different around the team. I think the pressure is going to be more on management to make this work. that the success is that it's time to win in the playoffs. It's time to go deep in the playoffs. Yes, you are in probably the toughest division in the NHL, arguably, and you're in a hell of a conference.
And there's going to be pressure on Zadorov and Lindholm to be good.
That's right, absolutely. And Mason Lohrei will be right there. So there's that left side of the D is going to be. There's a lot happening with this team, but when you go and put a guy who's so solid as Elias Lindholm, whose playoff stats were not bad at all, by the way, into this equation and say, okay, here we go. We now have him and Coyle in the top 6. We now have some monsters in the bottom 6. There's really no reason other than the hockey gets played and crap happens that there's a lot of ways that you cannot win when you have the blueprint. I now feel like this team, the ceiling is off for this team. I always felt like the Bruins were a little small, a little, like the toughest guys were banged up. They don't have enough tough guys. And I don't mean guys who are willing to drop the gloves as much as guys who play in a way that make the opponents hate playing them. And I feel like the Bruins are going to be tactically physical as usual, but they're going to have more ability to be formidably physical in terms of intimidation, puck retrievals, forecheck, banging bodies, breaking down teams. I think that I'm really intrigued by the possibilities with this lineup. And it's fortified down the middle. I'm excited about Poitras's ability. If he's ready, great. If he's not, I'm going to go watch him in Providence and enjoy that. There's just a lot there with this team. But I also think that, the post-Bergeron Krejci season has come and gone. The Cup half-full season has come and gone. And now the pressure's on this management team to say, this is your last big chance as a management team, in my opinion, to take this team the final step. I don't think, even as extraordinary as it's been, to be average 50 wins a year ever since Sweeney chose his own coach, that's been the case. They've averaged 50 wins a year. They didn't get it last year, but they got 65 the year before that. You're this kind of an elite regular season presence. You did win a series last year. It took a miracle of a play between Hampus and David Pastrnak to make that happen. You almost lost that one. Of course, they almost lost the first round in 11. But but it's time. It's time for this team to get where it's supposed to go. We're now in that kind of a season. That's the way this is now going to come to a head, I think.
I agree, but I would say I don't think the pressure is going to be on management so much this season, because I think they went out and spent the money and they brought in the players. I think the pressure is going to be on the coach.
Well, okay. That's true. That comes before, as you go along. You do players, then you do the coach, then you do
get the results this year. And to come out of the gate, have success, get the most out of the players that they brought in, find the right combinations, fix some of the stuff that was wrong with this team over the last couple of years, not get any too many men in the ice penalties that continue to shoot you in the foot. Like, there's going to be a lot of pressure on on Jim Montgomery to get results right out of the gate, I think, because I think management views this kind of like they did a couple of years ago.
They've had two amazing starts.
They loaded up with the roster and free agency, and they're going into this season with like a full loaded gun. Basically they could use a top 6 right wing at the trade deadline. But aside from that, I think they feel like they've addressed everything, and they have that big, strong, mobile back end that's got some like absolute warriors, that's got guys that can move the puck. They have some good offensive players. They brought in the number 1 center in Lindholm that can sort of fill in the Bergeron kind of role a little bit. They've got some young players that could potentially add to it. So like, there's a lot of weapons and there's a lot of things and a lot of depth now based on the players that they've brought in that Jim Montgomery is going to be able to play with. And I think it's going to be on him to get the results, on him to get off to a great start, on him to, make sure the ship runs smoothly and everybody's on the same page. And it's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out. But I agree with you that the expectations are high for the Bruins now. They should be high for the Bruins now. They're in a tough division, absolutely. The Atlantic Division is going to be very good again this year with Florida and Tampa and Toronto.
Yeah.
And then, like, there's probably going to be one of those teams of Detroit, Buffalo, Ottawa. Like, one of those teams is going to come up and be better than we expect. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. And I think that's, honestly, once the season starts, that I think is going to be – there's going to be a lot on his shoulders. That he's going to have
2 cracks at it and 2 extraordinary starts.
Yes.
If he doesn't have an extraordinary start this year, I'm not going to worry about that for its own sake, but I'll be looking at why, and that might have elements that are concerning. We'll see.
Yeah. But it's going to be a fun season. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the start of training camp. We've got rookie camp starts next week. We've got the Bruins golf tournament will be next week, and then the following week.
Did they set a date for that yet?
For the Bruins golf tournament?
Yeah.
I believe it's the same day as the start of rookie camp. It's next week. I forget what day it was.
I'm not going to be able to go. My way better half is having a foot surgery, and I'm going to be stuck by her side for 3 days at least.
Well, you're a good man for doing that, and I will give you the blow-by-blow from the Bruins.
You know what I hate the most is not visiting with all the alumni.
I know.
I love running into those fellas.
I'll say hi to Jay Miller for you when I'm down in Plymouth.
Billy Bennett.
Wherever the heck they do it this year. All right, Mick, thank you very much for joining us. All right, everybody else, it's game time for you. Thanks for listening. We'll see you at the rink.